Good evening. My name is Fatia Toure, and I am the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Sarah Lawrence College. And I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's program. As many of you know, our theme for this academic year is justice. And we plan to use this theme to address the inequities made starkly apparent by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the protests against racism and police brutality unfolding in our country and across the world. Alongside racial justice, we will consider environmental justice, economic justice, philosophical and moral underpinnings of the concept of justice, justice in U.S. jurisprudence, restorative justice, just to name a few. And as we did under our other themes that we had at Sarah Lawrence, whether it was democracy and education or pluribus unum, we hope to also take a hard look at some of the foundations of our educational model and at the role of progressive education in dismantling or perpetuating structures of inequity. And so tonight we are joined by our president, Cristle Collins Judd. A little bit about Cristle. She is a native Texan, and she came to the college from the Andrew Mellon Foundation, where she served as Senior Program Officer for Higher Education and Scholarship in Humanities. Judge previously served as faculty at the University of Pennsylvania, where she was the first woman tenured in the music department. In addition, at Bowdoin College, she served for 9 years and she became the first woman who was also appointed dean, and she later on went on to serve as provost. I am pleased to introduce Cristle, who will be in conversation with our esteemed guest, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, this evening. And so, just a little bit of background. I first encountered Dr. Michael Eric Dyson's work as an undergraduate Africana Studies major at NYU. I came across the book, I May Not Get There With You, The True Martin Luther King Jr., in my Invisibility and Blackness course. And I was immediately blown away by how he challenged our very notions of Dr. King's legacy. Fast forward to your commencement speech at my Howard University School of Law School graduation, where you gave us a message of being Black social engineers and pushing boundaries. I do have to say that being a fan of hip hop, what stood out to me the most was the way you flowed from your Big Daddy Kane references and Jay-Z references to social, political, religious, and philosophical references. So, as we were thinking about justice and thinking about the ways in which you weave so many elements that relate to this theme, I know that the Sarah Lawrence community today is in for a special treat. And so, just to give a little bit of Dr. Michael Eric Dyson's bio, he will be starting in January the Centennial Chair at Vanderbilt University, and will serve as the university's Distinguished Professor of African American and Diaspora Studies in the College of Arts and Science, and University Distinguished Professor of Ethics and Society in the Divinity School. He is a New York Times contributing opinion writer and a contributing editor of the New Republic and of ESPN's The Undefeated website. Dyson's legendary climb from a factory worker who didn't start college until he was 21 to a Princeton PhD, from church pastor to college professor, may help why writer Naomi Wolf terms him the ideal public intellectual of our time. And just to also note, he is the author of 21 books. Okay. Dyson has taught at other elite universities like Georgetown University, a sociology professor at Brown, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Columbia University, and the University of Pennsylvania. Dyson has won many prestigious honors, including an American Book Award and 2 NAACP Image Awards. And Ebony magazine cited him as one of the 100 most influential African Americans and one of the 150 most powerful blacks in the nation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about his book, The Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, which has been described by the New York Times as one of the most frank and searing discussions on race. A deeply serious, urgent book, which should take its place in the traditions of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. His new book, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America, which will be available on December 1st, but I believe you can pre-order it on Amazon. That should be your publicist there. Grapples with the cultural and social forces that have shaped our nation in the crucible of race, ending with the poignant plea for hope. Dyson's exciting new book is a guide to help America finally reckon with race. And without further ado, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson and Cristle Collins Judd.
Thank you, Fatia. Thank you so much. And thank you, Michael, for being with us tonight. And thank you, Sarah Lawrence community from all around the world, students, faculty, staff, alums, and friends, for joining us as we're in this series on justice. Michael and I will start in conversation, and then we'll open up to audience questions after a few. But most of my questions are going to come from his book, Tears We Cannot Stop, which Fatia was talking about, from 2017. As a way of leading us into the last 3 years and how you're thinking about things now. And so, Michael, maybe as we start, it's been some ways it seems like that 3 years were a few lifetimes ago, 2017, right? We all think back to all that's in between. And your book was a powerful, powerful statement at the time. And yet here we are in 2020. And so I wonder, as we start out, that if you were writing The Tears We Cannot Stop today, how it might differ, or maybe how we look forward to the insights that your upcoming book, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America, takes. So maybe this is a point of departure, talking a little bit about from the tears to that moment as a way of starting us off.
Right. Well, President Cristle and of course, Ms. Fatia, I'm honored to be here tonight, and all of the other distinguished ladies who are out in the audience. What an honor it is to be back at Sarah Lawrence after so many years. When I think about Tears We Cannot Stop, which seems eons ago on the one hand, and just yesterday on the other, I think about the fact that I had just finished my book on Barack Obama, the Black presidency, the politics of race, and Barack Obama in America. Barack Obama, the politics of race in America. I just finished that thing, 400 and some odd pages sitting there. I'd written up and everything. And that the very day I finished, Alton Sterling in Louisiana was killed selling bootleg CDs and DVDs outside a convenience store. The owner knew him. They were friends. They accepted, his hustle and what he was doing to support himself. And he was taken down by two cops for no good reason and shot without provocation. As they wrestle him down, they shoot him, I think, once or twice, and kills him. And then in close proximity to that, within, I think, 24 hours of each other, Philando Castile in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, was in a car, stopped by a cop, says to the cop, as you should do, look, I have a registered gun. It's, legal and the whole deal. So I just want to let you know, 7 seconds later, he's being filled with lead by this cop. And his girlfriend live streams on Facebook his demise as he lies there, sits there dying, and her daughter in the back seat watching, right? This is the tragic, traumatic nature of race in which this country existed at that particular moment. So what was that, 16 maybe? And my book comes out 2017 to grapple with these issues. And here we are again. some scant 3 years later, where we are confronting again the recognition that we must finally, faithfully grapple with the issue of race again. But this moment seems to be different. Only time will tell, along with our efforts. But if I were to update that book, conveniently enough, my book, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America, is that update. It is a series of letters. If Tears We Cannot Stop is a sermon to white America from my heart, written to white brothers and sisters, asking them to grapple with the American malaise, its original sin of not only enslavement, but of racial intolerance, racial bigotry, racial hostility, then this book is a series of letters to fallen martyrs, to be redundant, martyrs of the movement, men and women, young people, for the most part, who have fallen victim and prey to white supremacy, especially at the level of police brutality. But starting with Elijah Mclean, the young Black man in Aurora, Colorado, 23 years old, sweet-souled young man. Many argued was on the spectrum, a young man who was doing his work and harming no one, killed by the police. Another letter to Emmett Till, but I discuss Ahmaud Arbery in that chapter. Another letter to Eric Garner, but where I discuss with George Floyd. Another letter to Breonna Taylor. Another one to Sandra Bland. Another one to Hadia Pendleton. And then ending with a letter to Reverend Clemente Pinckney. So addressing white folk in the one book and trying to talk to the martyrs in the other book. And so it is my grief, it is my grappling, it is my gravitas, or the gravitas of racial reckoning that we're confronted with. And what do? How do we talk about it? Are we here again? What's going to make this different? If people didn't listen before with the outpouring and the rash of violence that occurred, at one point during a 7-year stretch, Black people were dying in record numbers at the hands of the police. And so it is astonishing, it is tragic that we confront this issue again. We're in, undeniably, regardless of your politics, left or right, or conservative, or progressive, or Democrat or Republican, I think we pretty much agree that we're in a unique presidency. And this presidency has really undermined the meaning traditionally of what we understand presidents to do across the aisle, whether George Bush or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan, right? Hopefully soon, Kamala Harris and whoever should be right now, Hillary Clinton, but I digress. So the fact is that this presidency has unleashed such horrid racist sentiment and passion. Not only racist sentiment and passion, sexist, gender-driven sentiments, anti-Mexican, anti-immigrant. We just read today that 545 some odd families separated from their kids. They still don't know where they are, the parents and the children. So we're dealing with a presidency that has driven a stake into the heart of American aspiration for racial justice, for social equity, and for gender justice. And God knows, for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people and the like, the rising tide of violence against the other. A man arrested today for wanting to kill Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Men arrested with a legitimate plan to try to kidnap the governors of Michigan, the brilliant Gretchen Whitmer, and of Virginia, the unpredictably wise and relevant governor there, Ralph Northam, in blackface, being asked to resign, reinventing himself as a person committed to racial justice and doing a hell of a job at that. which argues against cancel culture, but we'll talk about that later. So for me, the update would be that, white America, you're on the clock. What are you going to do? How do you make sure it's real? We've asked Black people, brown, red, yellow people, take care of it. Indigenous people, address it. We've had to bear the burden of that. Now it is up to white brothers and sisters to really try to make a difference in institutions, in higher education, in corporate America, in government, in private industry and enterprise. What do we do to try to live out the true meaning of the creed of America, as Dr. King said? How do we make that motto, e pluribus unum, out of many one, come to fruition? Dr. King said the night before he was murdered, America, all we're asking, be true to what you said on paper. That's what we're saying. You said it. These are the agreements. This is the document. These are the documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. If you want to even argue about the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, these are the words written in the immortal desire to forge a nation, a more perfect union. What must we do to make that real? I think that's where we are now. That's what I ask in this new book, after narrating the hurt and the pain, the trauma of the Blue Plague, of insisting once again that Black lives matter. And for white brothers and sisters who talk about all lives mattering, they should, but they don't. All white lives don't matter. How are you going to talk about Black lives mattering, right? All white lives don't matter. The lives of many white women don't matter. The lives of many gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual people don't matter as much. They're marginalized. Poor white people in Appalachia don't matter as much as people from Kennebunkport, Maine. So you ain't even mattering in your own community. What we're going to talk about when we speak about the broader spectrum of Black lives mattering and throwing in blue lives as if a pursuit of a profession is akin to a lived experience, right? Now, we don't want to take them to Sarah Lawrence and put them in a philosophy class and talk about an ontological obfuscation or a category mistake, as the philosophers do, but how are you going to talk about blue lives matter when that's a choice you made to become a cop, whereas Black people don't choose their racial identity in America, onto whose bodies, these Black ones, is thrust so often such deleterious and pernicious meanings when it comes to race. So all that is there. I try to reckon with that, talk with that, about that, and ask white America to finally, sincerely, with commitment, grapple with the racial inequalities that prevail in this culture.
So there's so much to unpack in what you've just shared with us, and so much to look forward to in the book that's coming. And I wonder, in that injunction to white America,
Mm-hmm.
and as I sit here, and it was the great pleasure to reread your book, and the choice of writing in the form of a sermon, and then writing these letters, right? The epistolary that you follow. But in this sermon, you address your reader as beloved,
Mm-hmm.
right? Constantly as beloved. Your reader, your white American reader, as beloved.
Right.
And I come from a Christian tradition, so I hear that with one kind of resonance. And I also can't help but hear Toni Morrison and the specter of beloved, and the fact that you brought that Toni Morrison's book Beloved is one of the second reading assignments that you give. But could you talk to us a little bit about what you mean with that address, beloved,
Right.
and how you felt like that was heard for your different readers, and what work you wanted that to do in the hearts and minds that you were impelling to change?
Right. Well, thank you for that recognition. And Toni Morrison gave me beautiful words on top of that to support this book, along with Stephen King. So that was an extra layer that you've wisely pointed to. Beloved does resonate with the novelistic gesture of Toni Morrison's grand architecture of Black suffering and enslavement, and how she grappled with that in that monumental book. But yes, as an ordained Baptist minister for some 41 odd years, um, I knew I had to preach a hard sermon to white folk, and I knew it was going to be hard to hear. I knew the castor oil was out. I knew the tough medicine was out. So I got to give some sugar to let it go down a little bit better. I didn't want them to feel attacked, assaulted. We know, and I talked about white fragility in this book, referring to Robin DiAngelo, and then eventually wrote the foreword for her book. I knew that fragile white feelings, innocence, white fragility, white, indifference, white obstruction, white diffidence, white deference, white deferral, white deterrence, um, white comfort would be rattled. The cage of that comfort would be shaken anew. And so, not because I want to be nasty, just because I was telling the truth. I realized that many white brothers and sisters are not used to hearing the truth from black folk. Like, think, who's the black Donald Trump? Yeah, keep thinking, because you don't know, because you can't tell. And when they are, say, Louis Farrakhan, oh my God, you're a bigot, you're a hate monger, you're horrible. He's pushed to the side. The guy that's comparable to you is the president. Just think about that, right? And so there is no really black Donald Trump, because black people can't tell that kind of what they believe to be the truth, right? And in order for them to be a black Donald Trump, then they'd have to be preternaturally ignorant of so vast a region of knowledge as to defy common sense. And yet to be black is to be thought dumb in this country. To be black is to be thought to be inferior. To be black is to be thought to lack the requisite skill. Even Thomas Jefferson, while he's carrying on an affair, a long-term relationship, common law marriage with a 14-year-old girl at the beginning of her journey with him, coerced, forced, several children, Sally Hemings. He's writing in Notes on Virginia, asking about the rational capacity of the Negro. So the black Donald Trump is black America, not dumb, not gifted, not insightful, not intelligent, with the caveat that he can do anything he wants to do. And I say that because Donald Trump occupies such a unique position in the history of this country. Some would call him the worst president ever, even if, right-wing Republicans who are conservative, who believe in adhering to certain values, find him opprobrious and destructive and subversive of the ideals. But I wanted to say that, given the temperature and the temper of the times, as Eric Hoffer called it, I didn't want white folk to feel assaulted and beat down upon, and to feel that this difficult truth, because we're not used to, that's why I began talking about Donald Trump, we're not used to black people telling the truth. And not like Donald Trump, calling people names, oh, you crazy old white person. No, we ain't even talking, no, please, we're not even talking about that. We're not talking about, are you crazy? We can't even be Dr. Phil. Are you stupid? Sorry, Texas. So the reality is that white America is not used to hearing the truth unvarnished from black folk, except if they're maybe speaking on rap music. Maybe it's a rap song, they're used to hearing some of the unvarnished hurt and pain and trauma and anger and rage that certain black people have, certain films and the like, maybe artistically, but never philosophically, never in terms of a homily. Couldn't even take Jeremiah Wright saying, "Goddamn America." And he was saying, he said, in the context of what he was saying, he said, no, we can't say God is blessing America, not with all the horrible things we're doing. Obviously, God is damning America. Couldn't even hear that. So it's very difficult for white brothers and sisters when we say, let's have an open conversation. This is why most black people go, nah, we ain't going there. Because you really don't want to hear it. Because you can't afford to hear it. And when you do, my God, why are you so angry? Why are you so full of rage? Why are you so besotted? Why are you so taken with such hate? Do you love this country? Couldn't even hear Michelle Obama say for the first time, I feel like proud of my country. Why would you be mad at Michelle Obama if that's exactly what she meant? And it is. Right? She explained what she meant. All right, whatever. Why would you be mad at a person who's part of a group that from the very beginning of their sojourn in this country from 1619 forward has been systemically precluded the opportunity, prohibited from flourishing at the heart of the American democratic experiment? And you're surprised that they would say for the first time, I feel proud of my country? What world are you living in? A white world. A white world of ignorance, a white world of obliviousness, a white world that doesn't take into account. I see white folk get mad about stuff on Twitter and go off about trivial stuff. And we're talking about people's lives. So I knew that white America couldn't handle the truth. Truth, you can't handle the truth. This is Jack Nicholson talking to Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth, but we got to tell it. We got to stop lying to white America. Barack Obama didn't tell white America the truth. He tried to tell as much truth as he could. There's a difference. He tried to be as generous and calm, which sometimes leads people when we're Black and when we're not really telling white folk the entire truth. We kind of cut corners, telling little white lies, trying to make you feel better. Don't really want to come at you. Now, some Black people honestly believe the things they say, and I get it. But the truth, the unvarnished truth, the agony that many Black people feel, white America can't hear. So what I wanted to do in this book, and I'm sorry for all of that, but I just wanted to set the backdrop for what I meant when I said, I call white brothers and sisters beloved, because I wanted them to know linguistically, at the level of nomenclature, at the level of language, that I include you as my brother and sister. You are part of my congregation. I don't care if you're Jewish, if you read the Holy Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Black Panther, the vagina monologues, whatever floats your boat, right? I want you to understand that we are in this project together. And I consider you a beloved figure, beloved. I consider you part of an intimate group of affiliation, though we are often at war and at odds and alienated from one another. And I wanted to bring white people back into the fold and to speak to them as brothers and sisters with some tough truth. So I invite you in because I don't hate you, I love you. But if you're really serious here, you got to hear what I'm saying. And a lot of white people wrote me saying, thank God you wrote this, but it was tough. Thank God you wrote this, but I got to admit I was angry first. Thank God you wrote this, but it was really, really hard for me to hear. And I said, well, don't listen to Malcolm X then. Don't listen to some other brothers and sisters who are going to come at you at the jugular. I wanted to bring the honesty of a Malcolm X with the love of a Martin Luther King Jr. And I wanted to join them together so that the power and the veracity of Black suffering and Black trauma and Black hurt and Black pain and Black anger and Black rage could be filtered in an arena through a medium that allows me to embrace white brothers and sisters as my friends, as my congregants, and as fellow travelers along the path to truth.
It's extraordinary, just extraordinary. And the way, and I realize that's that doesn't even begin to encompass everything that you just talked about in the entire range of what you're doing. And I'd like, if I could, to read a couple of passages from the book, which is a bizarre thing for me to read in your voice.
No, I love it. I love it. I want to hear it.
Something written at, in many ways, me. But I know that we have some in our audience who aren't familiar with your work, and I think it follows so well in a couple of places from what you've just said. And there's one of the chapters is called "The Plague of White Innocence." The Plague of White Innocence, and this is what you say. And this is if anybody's following in their books, it's page 104. Beloved, To be white is to know that you have at your own hand, or by extension, through institutionalized means, the power to take Black life with impunity. It's the power of life and death that gives whiteness its force, its imperative. White life is worth more than Black life. This is why the cry, Black Lives Matter, angers you so greatly. Why it's utterly offensive and effortlessly revolutionary. It takes aim at white innocence and insists on uncovering the lie of its neutrality, its naturalness, its normalcy, its normativity. The most radical action a white person can take is to acknowledge this denied privilege, to say, yes, you're right. In our institutional structures and in deep psychological structures, our underlying assumption is that our lives are worth more than yours. But that is a tough thing for most of you to do. And in that really searing indictment, and in that extraordinary encapsulation, you talked 3 years ago about what the cry Black Lives Matter meant, and you've just talked with us some more about it. But as you were writing these letters for your next book, and you're watching what happened this past summer, the murder of George Floyd, did that cry Black Lives Matter actually begin to change in this country? Did it begin to change in a way? I mean, you often do talk of hope as well, right? And so there's the extraordinary way in which you're reaching out in truth telling, but reaching out, that cry, beloved, is a hand that is out. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about whether or if you've seen that expression, Black Lives Matter, change or move, or in what, just where it is now, as opposed to where it was when you were writing 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's a powerful, powerful reminder of you reading that passage. In many ways, we are right where we were then in terms of the broad questioning of a term that was seen as problematic, provocative. All those Black Lives Matter people, they're Marxists. Those Black Lives Matter people, they're un-American. They hate this country, and so on. And some of that persists to this day, but there has been an opening of mind and an opening of eye where people go, oh, that's what you mean. Because when a man is lodged beneath the knee of a cop, and he is literally begging you to relieve the pressure of the leveraged full body weight on his neck, his mortally depressed column receiving the direct hit of your extraordinary knee boring into his neck, leaving him vulnerable, a 6'6" Black man who, if it was a fair fight, would thrash you, would do away with you. But behind your badge and gun, you barricade yourself behind qualified immunity. A constitutional matter, a legal one that suggests that any public servant, especially cops, can be exempt from being held to personal account for doing their job in the name of the state, which means cops ain't gonna usually be held to account for hurting Black people. And then when he begged, pleaded, was still nice, sir, please, sir, as he narrates his own death, I'm probably gonna die. Mama, America was seized by the collar, choked with grief, flooded with anger, a disbelief. This is what they have been trying to tell us. Because we know, not that the police don't hurt white brothers and sisters, they do, and kill them, they do, but not nearly with the reckless disregard for life that happens routinely with Black people. Yes, heinous things happen to white people, but often what we see on tape is cops running from white people who they should be arresting, and the white people yielding a machete or seizing the vehicle in which the white person, the cop, is driving, running away from them for fear of hurting them. And yet an unarmed Black man whose sin, whose crime was allegedly passing a $20 bill that was counterfeit. And the owner of the store said most people don't even realize they're passing counterfeit money. Is this man really dying in the streets of America for $20 that is said to be counterfeit, that he may not even realize? No, what we realize, what he's dying from is something more malicious. What he's dying from is the disregard for Black life. What he's dying from is what now makes sense to us, that Black lives don't matter. That no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how you plead, and hadn't we seen this film before? Eric Garner in Staten Island, where he says, I can't breathe 9 times. I think it was 9 or 11 times. I can't breathe. Mr. Floyd saying it over 20 times, calling for his mother at least 10 times or more. Narrating his own death, saying that I will die from this. You're going to kill me. The stages of the cross that Jesus went through, the 7 last sayings, are being approximated by Mr. Floyd as he utters what Martin Luther King Jr. did, an automortology, a self-description of death. And many white people for the first time went, bing, I get it. I get it. Like, this is evil. There's no excuse. There's no justification. No, he provoked us. Of course, they said that before they realized the film was out. George Floyd resisted arrest. The only resistance he had was because he was 6'6", didn't want to be put into the back seat of a cop car, and said, and resisted at that level by saying, I'm scared, I'm claustrophobic. And then they put him on the ground. That's the only resistance. He didn't threaten their lives. He didn't say, I'm going to kill you. He didn't act in a way that was putting their lives at death, in danger, at risk. And look at the multicultural nature. This is why diversity must be just, not merely different. You had 2 white cops, an Asian cop, and a Black cop. That's multicultural misery. That's diversity without equity. That's inclusion, all right. Hey, let's all get included, but what are you including them in? Was it James Baldwin who said you don't want to integrate into a burning house? Why is it diverse when it has horror? If you are Black and brown and red and yellow and you all agree that you don't like gay people, that's diversity with a destructive consequence. So beneath the liberal discourse of difference must exist a profound reckoning with equity and justice. And so I think many white people understood for the first time Black Lives Matter. That's why they painted it on their houses. That's why they held it high in their placards of protest. That's why they were willing, some of them, to die for it. That's why more white people than ever flooded the streets of America. It was an astonishing thing. This didn't happen in the 60s to the same degree. And so Black Lives Matter protests have been the most successful, the largest in the history of this nation. And so, yes, in a sense, even though there's been pushback, listen to the senators. This is why we just can't jump on Donald Trump. What about Mitch McConnell who refuses to say Black Lives Matter. The president refuses to say Black Lives Matter. Many of those white senators refuse it. Only Mr. Romney could say Black Lives Matter, a member himself of a religious minority, as a Mormon, but still captivated by too much, if you will, conservative ideology that dismisses the legitimacy of Black complaint and grievance. So what we have is white grievance. Oh my God, why do your lives matter more than ours? Please, please, you know better than that. Tell us what law was written, as there was in the mid 1800s, 1857 thereabout. Dred Scott, Roger B. Taney, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Black people have no rights that white people are bound to respect. That's the law. So when we talk about Black lives not mattering, we mean legally they don't, educationally they have not, politically they don't, in terms of criminal justice they don't. Anything that ends with the word system, public health, public school system, public health system, criminal justice system. Systemic racism is generated within and perpetuated through and transmitted by systems that continually relegate Black people to the margins, among many others. So on the one hand, there was the lethal persistence of ignorance and obliviousness, but on the other hand, some folk got woke. And when they were awakened, the alarm clock was George Floyd. You can never determine what will wake people up. We can be judgmental. White people, really? That's what it took? Did you not hear Eric Garner? Were you sleeping on Sandra Floyd? Is it Sandra Bland? Did you not even hear Breonna Taylor? What were you sleeping on? We could ask those questions, but the reality is many white brothers and sisters were awakened on May 25th, 2020, when George Floyd met his end on a pavement that turned into a pallet of misery, that turned into a cooling board for his death. And so, yes, I think there's a difference. I think there's an awakening. To what degree, we don't know, but we do know that there's been some profound reckoning, commercials made, NBA changing, NFL opening up, WNBA working, even hockey, where only the puck is Black. Okay, they got a couple brothers playing over there, but they are constantly subject to racist invective. So there was a reckoning. Corporate America, we're going to do things differently. Now, it's good to feel that. Then 6 months out, what are you doing? How are you changing? How is it getting rearranged? Yes, magazines like Vanity Fair presenting Breonna Taylor on the cover, talking about Black life, but the real test is how it changes your mind and your spirit and your outlook and your discomfort with the status quo and what it forces you to grapple with. So in that sense, yeah, some things are the same, but there are some big differences that have been signaled that I think are worthy of recognition.
So I want to follow on from a part of that, because you were talking in so many ways about systems and systemic racism. And at one point in the book, this is in a chapter called "The 5 Stages of White Grief." It was quite something to work through, a notion of grief too, in the way that you set us up for this. And here's what you said on page 89. Again, it's very strange for me to put something aimed at me back to the person who aimed it to me.
That's all right.
But often that reading aloud is the way that we actually take it in and work it through.
Yeah.
And I've picked this passage for a particular reason. You never stop to think how the history of whiteness in America is one long scroll of affirmative action. You never stop to think that Babe Ruth never had to play the greatest players of his generation, just the greatest white players.
Mm.
You never stop to think that most of our presidents never rose to the top because they bested the competition, just the white competition.
Mm.
White privilege is a self-selecting tool that keeps you from having to compete with the best. The history of white folks gaining access to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale is the history of white folk deciding ahead of the game that you were superior. You argue that slots in schools should be reserved for your kin, because after all, they are smarter, more disciplined, better suited, more deserving. And then you kick it, than inferior blacks. So I pulled that one out partly because I thought we would talk about systemic racism in some way or another, but also because you go right at the academy there. So I wonder, as somebody who's living in the academy, congratulations on the move to Vanderbilt, but who has lived in many parts of the academy, but also who has a foot in so many other places outside the academy as a public intellectual, as a pundit, as a preacher, how you think about where we are at this moment again at the academy. Where are the moves that we've made? Where are the ones that that we haven't? Part of running this series at Sarah Lawrence is we're saying we have to look out, but we also have to look in. So I'd love you to think about that systemic racism and the way you've so strongly made it there of the built-in affirmative action that was never called affirmative action because it only included a part of the world. How to talk with us a little bit about that?
Right. I began my class in I think it was the fall of 2019. My large lecture class with about 150 some odd students. And, maybe it can't be told tonight, but I have a sense of humor. And so I began my class, I'm always joking with my students and so on. And I said, oh, before we begin, are there any white kids here whose parents paid their way to college in a sport that they don't really play just so they could gain entry? Now, there was nervous laughter because we had just come off the recognition that a lot of white parents out here paying the way for their kids to get in, didn't have the grades, didn't have the wherewithal, but they had to hook up. And so they lied and fudged their records and said they played tennis when they don't know what a tennis ball is and so on. And a couple of them have gone to harsh punishment in jail for the long time of at least 2 months. When a Black woman who lied about the zip code for her child, just to get a better education so they could go to a better school, was put in jail for 5 years. Do you hear me? I just want a better school for my child. So I lied about my zip code so they could go to a magnet school, just a better school to give them a better chance. I ain't steal no money from you. I ain't ripped you off. I didn't lie, right? 5 years. And white actresses and actors paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to lie and fudge the record of their children to get in, and they served 2 months. Think about this, please, in terms of the goodies that are distributed in the name of white privilege when you claim there is none. And so I began that way to make some of my white folk a little nervous, although I always love them, and I bring them back in and I say, I'm just joking, but you get my point. Yes, we do. Because you look there going like, hey, the Black people are here because of affirmative action. You must be here because, you're Black, and Black people now get to hook up. I wish I was Black. Wish I could be Black. I could get extra points on a test or get consideration. Really though, I tell you what, let's trade. Let's trade the history of privilege that has accrued to whiteness for your getting affirmative action. Yeah, most Black people would trade in a minute. And so, because white brothers and sisters are not used to thinking of themselves in a way that would challenge their egos, challenge their belief systems, challenge who they believe themselves to be in regard to what they've earned. Why can't people be like me? I earned my way. You're born on third base and think you hit a triple? You're born in upper middle class America. You're born in suburbia. You're born where privileges accrue to you. Not all white people, but enough to make a significant difference. And yet you think you did it on your own. And as I point out in that passage that you read, yeah, Babe Ruth did not hit against the best ball players. If you're not playing Michael Jordan, you're not playing the best basketball player on the globe. You're playing the best white guys. Yes, Michael Jordan played basketball, but he was in what, 1984 he got drafted? Do you know about 4 or 5 years ago, the first Black player ever to play in the National Basketball Association died? Ain't that mind-blowing? That's in your lifetime. Right? You can tell I'm an old man. I'm up here looking at the camera like, what? So, right? That's in your lifetime. Larry Bird would have been considered the greatest had we not had integration, affirmative action to let Michael Jordan in. So does that change your view of affirmative action? If Michael Jordan is the product of affirmative action, don't never call it inferior. Please. If that's the product of affirmative action, what have you been missing? What does affirmative action mean? I remember I was on a plane with 2 white women and some other people too. It wasn't just us, but I was there. And this is before COVID, clearly several years ago. None of us had masks. Had I had a black man had a mask then, I would have been arrested. So we're on the plane, and these 2 elderly white women had, seen me on television and knew who I was and talking. And then the pilot announced herself. And the 2 white women looked at me and go, Dr. Dyson, what do you think about that? And I played it and I said, what? Pointing to the fact that the pilot was a woman. I said, oh, hell. If there's a woman flying this plane, I'm going to really sleep well now. They said, why? I said, they have tested this woman so deep, she could fly this plane upside down and land on a dime and give you change. You know they have put her through it, as opposed to the white boys who get drunk, who, if we're lucky, get caught, right? You remember that story a couple years ago? White pilot was getting on drunk as heck. It happens all the time because your privilege as a white male exempts you from the kind of scrutiny that women and people of color routinely receive. So to be white is the opposite of superior. It's your flaws don't get revealed. It's your bullshit doesn't get the chance to stink. Excuse me. I hope the president's not listening. So the reality is that yes, when you rig the game, you can call yourself a stable genius. Because you ain't met no real geniuses. Or I'm not saying white people haven't produced geniuses. Some of the smartest people I know are white. Also, because I grew up in Black Genius in Detroit, where there was an all-Black world. And I knew what genius was. And it looked black to me. Just like some kids who grew up with Barack Obama's only president. Hey, what's a white guy doing in the White House? What the hell? What is Donald Trump? White guys can be president too? So the thing is that when your ego is so fragile that you have to rig society, don't you know that's inferiority? Hey, you can't drink at my water fountain. What are you upset about? Hey, you can't go to my school. You're inferior. What, you scared? Won't you let me come to your school? Let me whip your ass in your class. Let me do physics better than you. I go to a one-room schoolhouse over here, but I got trigonometry deeper than you do. Let me show you with fewer resources. So, although tragically and systematically, the prevention and preclusion of Black people from participating in an equitable society means that if they're dealing with inferior circumstances, what do you expect out of the consequences of certain forms of education where you deliberately prevent people from doing well? right? When you're giving them inferior stuff, oh, we got an $80 million school out here in the suburbs, public school. In the inner city, they don't even have first print textbooks. Read Jonathan Kozol's Savage Inequalities years ago, but it's still powerful. There were kids who were thinking, the book said that Richard Nixon was still the president, and we were like 3 presidents past. So many white brothers and sisters, as the great Ira Katznelson, sociologist at Columbia, wrote, when affirmative action was white. How dare you? What? Yeah, you got the hookup. The World War II? The GI Bill? You didn't call it affirmative action, but what in the hell was that? Let's see. I served in the war, so did a lot of black people. Just remember that. And most of them did not get the GI Bill. Most. Some did, but very few. I served in World War II. I come home. I'm white. What happens? Points on a test to get a job. Oh, cool. You got the, oh, I got the job? Yes, yes. Extra money, loans for your crib, excuse me, for your house, for your domicile, so you can buy a house. Oh, okay. I got a job and I got a house. Oh, wait, here's the third part of the troika, the trilogy. You got a job, you got a house, right? And you got extra points to get into school. What? Money. You can go to college? What the hell? That's all. Can we get that? Can we get the GI Bill for Black America? For historic legacies of inequity? Martin Luther King Jr., who's often quoted by right-wing conservatives against affirmative action or against reparations, said if the nation has done something special against the Negro for 250 years, it must do something special for the Negro. Ain't enough to stop doing it, right? He said, that ain't enough. If you've done something against them, now you've got to do something for them. And so many white brothers and sisters, it insults them to believe that we ain't saying you ain't great, but you like everybody else. Most people are average. You got some geniuses and some dummies, right? And so the reality is that when you live in a culture that has made you believe that your worth rests upon suppressing somebody else, right? Like men, as my pastors used to say, you don't have to stand on a woman's grave to feel taller. Man, if I was preaching tonight, stand on a woman's grave, try to dehumanize her. Try to make her feel like less than. Pay her 70 cents on a dollar as to what you pay a man. And by the way, that still goes on. Femophobia, just scared of women when real women show up, all right? I coined that term, but you know, femophobia, just scared of a real woman. So the point is, yes, in a world that has been all white, that tries to maintain exclusively white relations for white properties and white elements of identity, for white promotion, it seems harsh when in the sandlot of life, in the sandbox of life, you got to share your toys. Oh my God, that's so unfair. You didn't earn them. They ain't your toys, homie. In fact, you stole them from my crib. Now you out here playing with them like they're yours. This is what slavery has been about. This is what Jim Crow was about. This was apartheid was about. This is what it was about. The theft, the historic systemic thievery, American kleptomania of Black talent, Black brilliance, Black gift, Black body, Black brawn, Black sweat, Black brain. So yeah, it's tough, but we got to say to them, Babe Ruth was great, but he ain't hit against the best ball players. He hit against the best white ball players. When you integrate it and you can hit, now forget Babe Ruth versus, say, Clemente, Babe Ruth versus Willie Mays. What about Clemente? What about Rivera? What about Rodriguez? What about these Latinx boys over here tearing it up? And if you hold against them, if you don't want them to play, if you keep it all white, then we see what kind of game it becomes. So I think that it's extremely important for that message to get through to white brothers and sisters to understand what an extraordinary advantage that whiteness has been, and therefore white privilege draws from that. And let me end by saying this. A lot of people hear white privilege, they go, wait a minute, I'm poor, I ain't rich, You got more money than me. You send your kids better places than I do. Barack Obama and his kids and so on. And Mr. Obama bought that by saying, yeah, my kids won't need affirmative action. Well, thank you, sir, but you ain't but one black president, homie. And guess what? If they see Sasha and Mali on the day they don't know who they are, they're going to be just another Negro too. Oh, how do we know that? Because Fox News didn't even care that they were kids of the president. The nasty names those children were called. So, yeah, in this world, privilege means, look, back when only white people could go to Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, it didn't mean all white people would go to Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. It meant the only people going to Princeton, Harvard, and Yale would be white. See what I did there? Not all white people can go, but only white people can go. That's what privilege is, right? So it doesn't mean when black people were prevented from working in jobs and stuff, there were a few rich people, but for the most part, our per capita income was horrible. It doesn't mean all white people are gonna be rich. It means the people who are rich are gonna likely be white. That's privilege. So you gotta get off of your butt and work hard. You still do. But because of your skin, your hard work can pay off. Another person working equally hard, if not harder, can never get but so much, so far. That's what racism systemically is. The imposition of a ceiling, glass ceiling for women, that turns quickly to cement on people of color and across the board. That's what it means. And that's why it's important to speak about competition, affirmative action, and justice in this culture.
You know, you ended the book, and I'm going to turn to I have lots of questions. I'd love to just be in the added layer of privilege I have of the conversation with you, but I want to open to our audience questions. But I was so struck that you chose to title the end of this book a benediction, right? That you chose, again, in that way of the tradition of the blessing, but the blessing that is the going forth to do, right? The blessing that's the obligation of being moved by and responding to the sermon. And I just want to thank you for that gesture and what that gesture meant in terms of, again, the sort of the outreach, the hope of what that suggested. We've got a chat full of questions. We probably won't get to them all, but I'm going to try to take a few of them and bring them your way. We've got a very wide audience tonight as I'm looking through and seeing who's here. Members of our community, the larger community. And one question that I'll pull out here is from Dr. Philip Bernard House. And he says, Reverend Dr. Dyson, I teach at a community college, and I get poor white students who wear MAGA hats and such, who are utterly opposed to any talk about race. I bring up incarceration rates and they say, reverse racism. I bring up privilege and they say, it's not racism, it's economics. I think I get further as their teacher and as a white person than others may be able to, but it's not far enough. Do you think there's any way to reach these students?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know, but you got to keep trying. You know, and even if you reach them, you may not reach them immediately. You may not reach them in the first 5 years, first 10 years, maybe in first 15, but maybe that 20th year, boom, something happens. So being an old preacher, Paul says, hey, one person plants the seed, another person will water it, and God is the one that's going to make it grow. So your job is to plant the seed, right? Later on, some people will water it, you know, out in life, but you got to plant the seed. You got to constantly oppose them, gently, lovingly, but firmly. Can't let them get away with it. And you got to begin to ask them some of the, you know, you're a teacher, and you got to try to figure out ways. Well, let me ask you this. Give them a thought experiment. When it was all white and only certain white people could go to colleges, how was that determined? Was it all merit? Was it pure? Oh, then we look at Harvard. Did you see the recent report of the high percentage of people who go to Harvard because their daddies and mamas went there? Or they gave some money? And then you start breaking down, start chipping away at some of the white excuses, the white ignorance, the white innocence, the white resistance. Reverse what? How did we start? How did you get your privilege? How did you begin? Who gave it to you? What does this whiteness mean in a culture where the laws were written? Show us a law. Ask them, where's the law written that white people have no rights that Black people are bound to respect? Just lay out for them all the stuff that was done before they got here that created a culture of opportunity for some and disadvantage for others. So you got to keep at it. You got to find out. You got to get smarter yourself, as we all do. You got to find out better ways, better thought experiments to challenge them to say, think about this. You say this is reverse, but what was the beginning? How did it begin? How did it start? Why was it a need for reversal? And if you say it's reverse racism, you admit that racism was going the other way, right? So catch them right there. Oh, so it's this reverse racism, right? When you say the car is in reverse, that means the car was going forward, right? So tell us, what does forward racism look like, right? So challenge them. Don't let them get away with it, right? Don't let them get away with it. You gotta keep at it. And you never know, not hostilely, but firmly. And hopefully, as you do so, you're planting seeds that will be watered by others that may grow in another 10 years. It's frustrating, it's hard, but we're depending on you. We've deputized you, Professor House. You got to keep at it.
So a question from Adam Treitler. In speaking up and out about anti-racism, where should we focus our voice? Directly at policymakers and people with power? Or should we address those impacted by racist policies who embrace them nonetheless in an attempt to empathize, educate, and empower?
Yes.
So talk about allyship, both allyship and how to do the anti-racist work.
Got to do them both. Got to do them both. Got to do them both. And, you know, it's tough because, you know, some Black people are exhausted. They're like, man, we're tired. Y'all been saying y'all going to be allies for a minute. And how does it turn out? You get interested, then you get disinterested, then you get bored, then you won't do no more. Then it gets tough. Or some Black person says something to you and you get your feelings hurt. Right? I want to be an ally to women. That means sometimes they're going to say rough stuff to me because I'm stupid and I'm still doing crazy stuff. And I got to squeeze that, you know, femophobia, that misogyny, that sexism, that patriarchy out of me. I got to be challenged. I'm one of the good guys. My God, what are you doing it to me for? I wrote a book called Why I Love Black Women before it was popular. Oh my God. Really? Am I exempt? That means I got to get on it even more. So it's tough when you're trying to be an ally. But there are different, you know, as the great philosopher Meek Mill said, there's levels to this ish. Okay. See, Miss Fatia, So Fatia, I broke it down on the ish part. So here's the thing. There's levels. Here's beginning membership of allyship. What is it? You've just joined the club of allies. What do? Here's your opening membership. You get a copy of Dyson's book and Kendi's book and Stephen's book and Robin. All right. Then you want to go higher? Oh, okay, like the NAACP. You want to be associate members? Oh, okay, well, that's good. Well, why don't you start looking at the institutions to which you belong and figuring out how to challenge them, a little bit more elbow room for progressive, you know, racial theory. Oh, okay. Oh, you want to be a full member? Oh, okay. Then start asking the institutions to which you belong to disinvest in their vicious perpetuation, whether consciously or not, of racial inequity. Oh my God. Oh, you want to be a lifetime member? Whoa. Wow. So you ever heard of John Brown? Right? Then you got to get on the front lines. Then you've got to walk and march, make your bodies vulnerable. Look at the two white brothers who died in Kenosha when a young 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse killed them. Now, the president of the United States of America calls thugs those people who march mostly non-violently. Every now and again, some violence breaks out, mostly against property. Property you stole is America, right? Last time I checked, when you were in Boston imitating native people and stealing tea and throwing it in the river, you done committed about 4 crimes. Impersonation, false impersonation, thievery, and looting. And now you calling it revolution. Oh, that's easy to do. Hey, we're trying to find a nation. Oh, really? Oh, that's an excuse. Ask the British if they thought that wasn't looting. Ask the British what they called that. So he calls protesters for justice, looters, and a young white kid who murders people, American heroes. Don't just blame Donald Trump. That's your mama and your grandmama and other people who vote for him. I'm not racist because I vote for him. Maybe you could have said that the first time. You can't say that now. Hard to hear, because you want to have the separation of church and state. Oh my God, I can agree with him philosophically and adhere to his principles. Yes, right? But I don't, endorse his beliefs. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, I believe in what the Ku Klux Klan is doing is amazingly important by wiping out the vermin of the culture, but I don't adhere to their violent methodology. Come on, stop. So the thing is that when we look at the culture and see how we perpetuate these inequities, we have to be conscious of the fact that we have to get involved. We have to look at allyship, and we have to look at anti-racist practices. And sometimes that means we got to be more vocal. And let's be real. I don't care how funny I am, how cute some of you might think I am. Okay, nobody does, but I'll just pretend you do. What a great professor you think I am and all that. It don't make no difference. Some white folk ain't gonna hear me. They're gonna see me and go, that nigger. Sorry, that's just what it is. That's the truth in 2020. But you have an opportunity that when you go there and your grandparents say, these niggers, they're just my grandma. Now I know I love you. Now this is at Thanksgiving dinner. First of all, eat the food. Don't check grandma before you eat. Now, let's be very practical. Get the turkey and dressing. Okay, y'all don't call it dressing. What do y'all call it? Stuffing. Get the stuffing and the sweet potato pie. Oh, you don't eat sweet potato pie. You eat pumpkin pie. Eat the sweet potato pie. Okay, pumpkin pie and dressing. Right before you attack her. Got to get your food on now. Then afterwards you go, now, Granny, what you said was problematic. I love you, but that is not right. Calling Black people out of their names and epithet, that's not cool. Or guess what? It don't have to be Granny, could be your grandchild. Oh yeah. You think those little neo-Nazis, they're not old. They're like in their 20s. Some of them 18, 19, 20, come on. So you've got to go inside. I want to deputize every white person on this stream. I am deputizing you now. Hold your hand up. I say your name. I'm now being deputized by Michael Eric Dyson to go into white spaces, places, and faces. And then I will tell the truth, lovingly, with humor, but directly. And sometimes not so humorously and not so graciously, and say, you're wrong. If we can get to white people as white people, they will listen to you far more than they'll listen to me. And that's your responsibility to carry that forward.
Thank you. So Claire Rodman writes, can you talk about the parallels in the federal handling of Hurricane Katrina and COVID-19 as we see the disproportionate effect yet again on communities of color?
Yeah. So Hurricane Katrina and COVID-19, one is a man-made, nature in both cases to a degree, right? Hurricane Katrina, the natural forces, we're talking about what happened with certain bats and what they did and how it got transmitted and so on and so forth. Not like your president who's out here talking about the Chinese flu, even if he got it. And those of us who were saying, no, I'm not going to jump on the president and feel good about attacking him or wishing him harm. I didn't. I wanted him to recover because he's a human being. And though I disagree with him vigorously, he's a human being that we should respect and express the desire. Respect as a human being and express a desire to want to get well. However, having said that, what a horrible human being he is. And when you look at what happened in Hurricane Katrina. You know, again, a lot of Black people got blamed for their condition, their plight and predicament. Hey, why don't you get out early? Everybody ain't got money just to get up and get out when a hurricane is announced. They don't have another house to go to. Their relatives live near them. One of the things about the Ninth Ward in Hurricane, and I wrote a book called Hurricane Katrina, you know, The Color of Disaster, Hurricane Katrina and the Color of Disaster, Come Hell or High Water is the name of the book. And when you look at it, a lot of the relatives of Black people in the Ninth Ward, where a lot of Black people were living, lived near them. They didn't live in Houston. They didn't live in Louisiana, right? I mean, another part of Louisiana, right? That they could get away from. They lived near them. That was beautiful. That's why, hey, my uncles, my aunts, all of them live near here. Everybody didn't have a car. They didn't have gas to put in the car. They didn't have a bank account. There's some white folk with all that stuff who refuse to leave. I ain't going nowhere. I'm staying in my house. And I get it. So don't call Black people stupid and dumb. And then when we look at what happened, white people looking for food, they're foraging for food. They're survivalists. Black people do it, they're looting. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious and so tragic. And when we look at Hurricane Katrina and the ways in which it revealed pre-existing conditions of racial inequity, those who live higher ground are whiter and less colored, and those who live lower and more vulnerable, browner and more colored, right? Same thing with COVID-19. Pre-existing conditions. Well, why don't you Black people eat better? Why don't you eat less sugar and get less diabetes and get less heart disease? Well, damn, where's Whole Foods, homie? The neighborhood store has more high sugar content cereal than anything. And it's more expensive to be poor than it is to be rich. I be damned. It takes more money to be poor. It takes more of your resource. If you're paying higher rents, you're paying for higher rates of compensation for food and stuff in stores, then people at Whole Foods are getting better qualities of foods. So COVID-19 exposes the fact that Black and brown people don't get to the doctor the same way. Healthcare system, systemic inequality. You know, they did a study the other day. I know y'all think I'm making this up. Go look this up. Say no, because I tell my students, don't never trust nothing I say. Read it for yourself, right? If I can teach you anything in 4 years of college, read it for your damn self. Don't take my word for it. All right, you can take Crystle's word, but everybody else, don't take it. Don't take the word. Look at it for yourself. So they did a study the other day that said Black babies have a better chance of surviving if Black doctors are treating them. God darn it. A2 Brutus at the babies. Babies, infants in the operating room after they're delivered. Then they go to the waiting room with whatever with the babies. And if a Black doctor is attending to them, that child has a better chance of survival. I just be damned. Now, that doesn't mean that white doctors are racist. Oh, I hate these Black kids. We're talking again, unconscious bias. Maybe they said older parent, let me get back to this point. Older patients, equally wealthy, Black, white, go to the doctor, healthcare, heart disease. The white person receives more aggressive treatment for heart disease than does the Black person. Same economic status. Don't trust me? Read the study. So now get back to the babies. That if we don't have Black doctors who are intervening to love those kids, no matter what is going on, no matter how rough it looks, to help and nurture them, they will not do as well. If that doesn't tell on where we are and who we are, nothing does. And so, yes, the COVID-19 suggests that there are pre-existing conditions of healthcare, and the frontline workers happen to be Black and brown, Black and Latinx, right? The ones who you think delivering your food, who you think are out here ringing the cash register, putting the gas in the planes, who you think doing that? So they're more vulnerable on the front line as workers than white people who can stay at home or people like us who are privileged enough to be on Zoom with the bandwidth necessary and the Wi-Fi that makes it possible. We ain't got to go to McDonald's parking lot to try to get on Wi-Fi as poor people. We can stay in our homes. And so the parallels are remarkably depressing, but they reveal pre-existing conditions of racial inequity, hostility, and the discouragement of racial parity that would make this country a far better place had we practiced otherwise.
Thank you. So Lauren asked, how important is it for the BLM movement to be anti-capitalist?
Well, after you get the billionaires to help you out, go on, be anti. I mean, who's anti-capitalist? I'm just asking a question. So are you anti-capitalist in school? But when you get out, you don't take a job? Or you limit your own money? Do anti-capitalists make over $100,000? Can you be an anti-capitalist and make $500,000? Say 250. Is it the money you make or the attitude you have toward it? Now, look, I'm extremely critical of capitalism as a voracious ideology that punishes and stigmatizes the vulnerable and the poor. There's no question about that. And so I'm sympathetic to anti-capitalism for sure. The question is, if the accumulation of wealth itself creates disproportionate forms of wealth concentrated in other people's hands, yeah, obviously that's a problem. Doesn't mean that we all hate Jeff Bezos because he's like 100 million, 200 million back again, got a divorce, had to give up 30, 40 million, billion. What is his ex-wife doing? Giving money to Black colleges. Howard, 20 million, somewhere else, 20 million. I mean, more than they've ever gotten in their lives. Now you can say, Martin Luther King Jr. said, if justice prevails, you don't need charity, right? Charity is a poor substitute for justice. Make the distribution of wealth more equitable and we ain't got to ask for no handouts, right? So I'm down with that. But in the meantime, I do find sometimes when people are talking about anti-capitalism, I'll be looking at people like, you richer than a mug, new. You tell me about some damn anti-capitalism. What you giving up? What is your salary? What you making, right? I'm impressed if you anti-capitalist. I see some of my colleagues at Ivy League schools. Well, go teach at, what you doing then? You teaching at a damn school with $1 billion endowment. Go teach at Howard. Go teach at the all-women school that doesn't, go teach at Sarah Lawrence. Go teach at Smith. Go teach somewhere where people need and don't have. Like if you're gonna be real about it. So it's not that I'm against anti-capitalism because I'm for it. It's just interesting to me to see the contradictions and the unexamined, right, convergences of what is convenient and what is philosophically stringent, by which I mean it's easy to be anti-capitalist if you ain't got no dough. Be anti-capitalist when you got some money. And if anti-capitalism is an attitude and disposition, I guess you could be anti-capitalist as a billionaire, if that philosophy works. Or is it by definition, if you're a millionaire, you're not anti-capitalist or a billionaire? What does that have to do with Black Lives Matter? Can Black Lives Matter, are they getting support also from certain foundations that would help rethink what it is? The foundation that your president came from, all right, could they support Black Lives Matter? Ford Foundation, Mellon, right, Carnegie, public monuments? So it gets real tricky in terms of what anti-capitalism means. If you want to practice it seriously, yes. But to use it as a culture to beat other people up, you ain't even anti-capitalist. You a damn rapper. You ain't doing that. You know, you a professor. You a student. Most young people in this country can't even attend college. Do you know the small percentage of people? Your president knows better than me. I don't know, 20, 30%. It ain't even that high of people who are getting college education. Trust me, homie. Trust me, homie. Trust me, home girl. It ain't nothing like equitable. So if we're going to be anti-capitalist, should we receive foundation grants or scholarship monies that allow me to go to college, right? So we got to define what anti-capitalism is. And I think we should be. Martin Luther King Jr. was anti-capitalist. He was making $250,000 back in 1961. You know how much money that is? That's money right now. But you know how much cheddar that was then? He gave every dime except $10,000 to the movement. He kept 6,000 to go with the 4,000 he got from his father to make an unprincely sum of $10,000 to support a wife and 4 kids. That's anti-capitalism. I ain't practicing that. I'm giving my salary up too. These kids of mine who are, can you get off my payroll? Damn, you're 40 years old. What? But I know in this day and age, kids don't make what they used to make. People graduating from college don't have the same situation as a young woman who goes to Rice University for music education, then goes over to, King's College in London, hangs out with the Brits, goes, I bet you, Brixton is a lot different now than it was then. So the reality is that, yes, it is extremely important to have a critique of economic systems that perpetuate inequity. But there's some people who call themselves socialists too, making a damn boatload of money. So we got to ask the question, what do we do with money? How do we think about it? How do we view ourselves in relationship to it? And how hypocritical are we being when we talk about it and don't examine our own participation? And I'll end by saying this, in the system. I remember rappers used to say, yeah, man, I ain't with this, the big corporations and shit. I'm out here, on the street. I'm selling records out my trunk. Well, wait, much slow. Okay, true. But the moment you put your voice on a product and you selling it, son, you in the game. You might as well be one of these big corporations where you could distribute your music so other people can hear it. I'm not saying don't be independent. I'm not saying don't understand it, but don't pretend purity is your circumstance. So I guess what I'm against is the puritanical impulse within the culture that would leverage its authority against some by claiming that they are sellouts when the very people pointing their fingers are participating in some questionable fashions as well. Sorry to over answer that, but I just wanted to make that plain.
I would love to ask you many, many more questions. We're actually we're even overtime already. Lots of people are putting happy early birthday to you. Your birthday is obviously happy birthday from all of us here. Michael, what an extraordinary evening that you brought us in terms of the ways that you continue to challenge, confront, provoke, hope, and love, all in one extraordinary way of pulling this together at a moment of a long overdue racial reckoning for our country. So I really want to thank you for being in this conversation, for giving me the chance to give voice to that conversation with you on behalf of our community, and to say that we can't wait to read the next book when it's out, and we'll all go for the pre-orders. And hopefully we'll find a way to be back. Yeah, I'll give you the plug on the book, right? I pre-ordered mine today.
Oh, I love you. You're my favorite college president tonight.
Yeah, tonight. I know. Say hello to all the rest of them. But thank you so much, everyone, for being with us tonight. We're going to continue this conversation across this year on the theme of justice. And 2 weeks from today, we will be the day after an election.
Wow, I'm coming back. I'm coming back, man. I'm coming back.
The day after an election.
We got coming in.
So we're working. Yeah, we're working
it out.
On our next. But
I'm gonna have to come back and hang out with y'all. That's.
Okay.
I hope we have a reason to celebrate. Y'all drop me an email, please. Just send me an email. I would love to hear from you. It was wonderful to have this opportunity. Thank you.
And I got to tell you, Sarah Lawrence has been co-ed since 1969.
Oh, that's right. But I still give it up to the women. All right.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.